EJ. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo. Welcome to everyone. Nice to see you all. We're back after a few days' absence. We're going to continue reading. And first I will begin Kirtan. Too much sun. What to do? Hold on. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Govinda Hari Murari He Natanarayana Bhaja Vasudeva Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One second. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Hari Go Premanande, Hari Hari Go. Gaura Premanande. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Name. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavadi Paschatya Dastarine. So I have a document to read from. And Tanya, can you tell me where we left off? And I'll go to the document, make life easier. To remember. So just give me a moment, and if I am smart enough to find where I saved that document, I think I know where it is. Let's see. Okay. Tanya, I'm bringing up the document. If you can just tell me the page number, that would be fantastic. Yeah. And then we can start. I don't remember where we left off. Let's see. This should be the next paragraph. Above these topics. Above these topics, Ramananda Roy, yeah. Oh. I gave the wrong title. I gave the wrong title to this class. I thought we were talking about Maya bodies. Now we're on higher topics. Okay, so we were, if you remember, Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya were speaking. They were speaking about Varnashram and then serving Krishna by giving up furtive results. Detachment. Lord Chaitanya was saying, no. And Lord Chaitanya was trying to get Ramananda Roy to speak about pure bhakti. And until he spoke about pure bhakti, then Lord Chaitanya said, no, you're still dealing with, he said bhaya, which means external. Whereas the Bengali would say bhaja. It's external. it's not the highest thing, it's not pure. And then we had talked about, Ramananda Roy had said, surrender to Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya said, in the context Lord Chaitanya was framing that in, he was saying that was about giving up varnashram, but it wasn't about pure devotional service yet. And we had discussed that it's not the context in which Prabhupada explains surrender. But this was the context that Lord Chaitanya was, I don't want to say understanding it, but within the, he was saying it's not clearly delineated, pure bhakti is not clearly delineated in that verse. Of course, for us, Prabhupada always delineates pure bhakti, so that's how we see it. Whoa, you have reverb on. Now we're out of the temple, back in my office. So that's why Lord Chaitanya rejected that. So that's where we left off. Above these topics discussed by the Lord and Sri Ramananda Roy, there were still more elevated spiritual talks between the two great personalities, and we purposely withhold those topics for the present because one has to come to the spiritual plane before further talks with Ramananda Roy can be heard. We have presented further talks of Srila Ramananda Roy with the Lord in another book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. That's a very interesting paragraph. This is the introduction to Bhagavatam. So what were those further talks? As we said, he quoted a verse, Jnana prayasam udapasyanamanta eva, give up all speculation and just hear about Krishna. So give up fruitive results, give up varnashram, give up speculation, just hear about Krishna. That was the beginning of what Lord Chaitanya considered to be pure bhakti. So he accepted that. And so from there, then he described the different rasas. Ramananda described the different rasas in servitude, friendship, parental, and then the highest, Madhurya rasa. With each ras, he said, tell me more, tell me more. So the idea was to glorify the position of the gopis, as Bhagavatam says, that they're Bhajabadu Bhagena Chau Kalpita. There's no devotion like that of the gopis. So it was to glorify pure devotional service. That's where Mahaprabhu wanted to take the conversation, to glorify pure devotional service and glorify the gopis, who are the exemplars of the highest bhakti. So the Prabhupada's saying, we're not going to go there now because to understand the gopis or understand any kind of pure devotional service is not something you can really understand in the beginning. And it's interesting, there's often times in the early days of the movement when questions like this would come up about the gopis and this and that. And Prabhupada would say, just, follow the principles and the practices that you're given, and don't worry so much about it. So it will come, but Prabhupada's point also is that how much can you understand if you're still contaminated? And so until we become free somewhat from material desire, especially sexual desire, how much will you understand of Krishna's love of the gopis, which is completely transcendental to that? And so it's like, become a little bit purified before you want to dive deeply into it. There's a really funny story I heard the other day. I don't know if I told you this story. I might have told it yesterday to the Russian devotees. But Prabhupada had met some Christian mystics, and they were asking, I think they were Christian mystics or yogis. No, they were Christians. And they asked Prabhupada, can you tell us something, about the mystical side of Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said, yes, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. They said, no, can you tell us about the mystical, esoteric, the deep secrets? And Prabhupada said, yes, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. And they were eating meat. So basically Prabhupada was saying eventually he did tell them that you can't understand unless you follow these principles. So that's what he was saying. And so sometimes devotees would ask questions about something esoteric, and Prabhupada would say, just stick to the principles at this point. So how can you go higher? There's no question of going higher. They were eating meat. So for us, it's the same thing. Become you can only understand what you're qualified to understand. So you can't understand just by reading it. So that's why we have to be careful to, as Prabhupada's saying here, you study everything. Then you become qualified. Then when you come to the 10th canto, you'll have some adhikari to understand it, and you'll get something from it. Of course, then you'll say, but Prabhupada put it in the Krishna book. That's true. Full of philosophy to help us understand it. And very, very high topics. I was just reading today a book about Sakya Ras. And it said very, very rare persons will enter Sakya Ras, will get that position. It's not, it's always, we're always told that when you approach this pure level of devotional service that's exhibited by the Brajavasis, you always look at it from a distance with reverence and awe, understanding how great it is and how far we are from it. So the reward, as we've often said, the reward of pure devotional service is that you can understand rasa, and you can understand your own rasa. That will be revealed when you're pure. But until it's revealed, the reward of pure devotional service is that you understand Krishna's Leela more deeply. Tattvam, in truth. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tattvata. You understand it in truth. The other day I was listening to a lecture, and Prabhupada said, if you can conquer attraction for women, of course, if you're a woman, that means man, or depending on your sexual preference, it may be man or woman. But if you can conquer, when Prabhupada talks about conquering woman, it means sexual attraction. He said, if you can conquer your attraction for woman, then you can capture Krishna. And then I thought, yes. That has always been the impetus for me to overcome my conditioning. And I was thinking about conditioning in relation to what Prabhupada was saying. And there's so many things that we like as individuals. Like you may like a certain food, or you may like the ocean, someone else likes mountains, someone else likes deserts. And we all have different likes and dislikes. And a lot of these likes and dislikes are not something we've consciously chosen in this life. They've been cultivated in other lives. And then you kind of just wake up in this life and you have them. And some of them are not healthy for bhakti, right? And some of them are healthy, but some are not. We're fortunate if we have attractions that are healthy for bhakti, but some are not so healthy. So, and there we are. We just appear in this body and we have these attractions. And some things are diametrically opposed to pure devotional service, some of our attractions. So unless you're a liberated soul, you are born in a body that when it hits puberty will feel sexual desire and sexual attraction, whether it's for the same sex, opposite sex, whether you realize you're in the wrong body, you're a man and you want to be a woman, you're a woman, you want to be a man, whatever it is, it's just like you feel it. Like people who are homosexual, they feel it when they're young. They don't feel attraction for the opposite sex. It's something in the majority of cases that they chose consciously. It's just, this is how I feel. And so sexual desire, it's just, there it is. The desire to eat, there it is. Sleep, there it is. Desire to eat this food, there it is. The desire, I like this kind of thing, there it is. So this is our condition. And this statement of Prabhupada has always been such an inspiration for me, because Prabhupada was saying, if you can conquer this attraction, and so he's not saying it's like easy. Conquer means it's a battle, right? It's going to be difficult. But if you can conquer it, what do you get? Then you can capture Krishna, both because you've transcended your desire and also because you get Krishna's mercy for giving up something that's attractive to you, that could give you physical pleasure or mental pleasure. So it's so inspiring to think that, our whole practice of bhakti, in one sense, is about conquering all these attachments and desires, things that we like but may not be helpful, or we can't use them in Krishna consciousness. And we have to just say, okay, this I will give up, because if I do, I will get Krishna. And if it's something I can't conquer entirely, then I will engage it in a way that I eventually can transcend it. I eventually can conquer it. That's one way or the other, directly or indirectly. So, and then what's the reward? Now I have Krishna. I have a relationship with Krishna because I was willing to give up everything else that would go that was antagonistic or an obstacle to that relationship. So if you meditate on this, it can be extremely inspiring when you find it difficult to give up something. Like sometimes when we are attracted to something and we're trying to overcome that attraction, but that attraction is very persistent. You overcome it, but it comes back. Kind of like, a reoccurring disease, and you think you got over it and you're fine, and then it comes back again. It can be extremely discouraging, especially, you go decade after decade after decade and you're still fighting it. And you might think, this is like a losing battle, or, what am I doing here? Or why should I keep fighting this? Because you can capture Krishna. And just from a practical level of psychology, the more you conquer something, the more you gain belief that you can continue to conquer it. The more you give into it, the more you lose the belief that you can do it. And Shastra says that every time you give in to sensual desire, and we know this just through the process of addiction to anything, whether it's potato chips or cocaine, we know that the more you indulge in it, the more the desire to do it increases, which is part of the reason we all became devotees, because we indulged in many things. And it never satisfied us. It just increased the desire to do it again, or to do it more, up the dose of the drug. So it's important. And so we're thinking, this desire is just, it follows me everywhere, year after year after year. Why do I keep fighting it? Because by fighting it, you prevent this seed from dropping, which causes the desire to continue, because that's the way it works. So, if you have to do something, but you don't believe you can do it, it's virtually impossible to do it. And one of the reasons we may not believe we can do something is we have a lot of evidence of failing. But it works the opposite way. Even if something is difficult, but somehow or other you can do it, or basically be successful most of the time, then you gain confidence that I can do this. It may not be easy, but I can do it. But whenever we give in, not only does it create the desire to do it again, but it creates subconsciously the idea that I'm not going to be successful, that I can't do this. And that's why when you understand this, it's super important to understand this, because every time you feel like, I just feel like giving into this, whatever it is, watching a movie or whatever it is, that you could utilize your time doing something better, you just understand it's working on you subconsciously that I'm not able to do this. I'm not able to control myself. So it's this, Prabhupada saying, if I can conquer sexual desire, whatever it is, if I conquer my ego, conquer my greed, whatever it is we have to conquer, I can capture Krishna. So conquering means you keep fighting. We know that. Successful people keep fighting. They're fighting for something material. We're fighting to control ourselves. So keep fighting, because you'll capture Krishna. And when you capture Krishna, you'll look back and go, that was a good fight and it was worth it. Because if I give in to that fight, all I get is momentary gratification. But after the gratification, I get a lot of frustration. But worse than that, I think the worst thing we get is when we give in, it's like, okay, now I'm still so far away from Krishna, and I'm still so far away from understanding his Leela. And I'm giving in to my sense gratification, which means that I'm still in the ego that I'm the enjoyer. And then how will I understand Krishna's Leela? How will I be able to relish his Leela? It's not that you can't relish it, not that it's not blissful, but to enter it and understand it deeply, we can't be competing with him and understand him. That's the point. Which therefore, I'm just trying to inspire you to fight, keep fighting. And don't give up the fight, because no matter how hard it is, when you give up the fight, it just becomes harder to, if you are a devotee at heart, but you have difficulty, at some point in your life, you're going to come back to fight. But it's just going to be harder if you spent time not fighting. And, so somehow or other, just remember that if you can conquer blank, whatever your blank is. Of course, everyone, it's sexual desire, but there are other things. If you can conquer this, you can capture Krishna. That's the prize, right? And so there are people out in the world who are working hard to conquer something, to achieve a goal. Everybody's doing it, or so many people are doing it. So why shouldn't we do that for Krishna? Of course we should. And we should, though we have to remember this. So Kaylee says, thank you for saying this. What this is, I forgot. We don't know what it is. Maybe it'll become, I'm transgender devotee, and I certainly didn't choose it yet. I thought that's what you meant. Came with my body. Transitioning was the scariest thing I ever did, but it was also the best decision I ever made. If I had not, I would never have come to Krishna, I am sure. I was far too unhappy and not at all interested in living. Wow, amazing. Some people ask, why would someone have a mind of the opposite? Let's say, have the mind of a woman and the body of a male. And I've never read anything that Prabhupada said as to why that happens, but the only thing that Prabhupada said is that when a devotee wrote Prabhupada and said he was not sure whether he wanted to be a man or a woman, because he would go back and forth. And Prabhupada said, he didn't say it was wrong or bad or condemn him, although devotees might say that, and Prabhupada didn't, which is another topic for another course. But Prabhupada said, decide what you are and execute devotional service. So Prabhupada's solution was always, whatever, be engaged in devotional service. Whatever you have to do to be engaged in devotional service, that's what you should do. That was always Prabhupada's mood. And so he just told this person, he didn't even, talk about man or woman, that it's a problem or whatever. He just said, do what you have to do. Now, there's another story where Prabhupada had a servant, and he was explaining to Prabhupada how he wasn't attracted to women, he was attracted to men. And of course, for Prabhupada in his culture, it was in the closet, and homosexuality was in the closet in those days. And there wasn't much known about it. But still, when he was explaining this to Prabhupada, the Prabhupada understood it, and he was kind of like at wit's end, it seemed. And he told everything to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, then find a nice boy and live with him. Although that devotee never did it, so we may ask, well, why did Prabhupada say that? Because for Prabhupada, the worst thing that could happen is that someone would leave Krishna consciousness. So if in that case, this was going to keep them in Krishna consciousness, although, in ISKCON, if, you're a leader and you would encourage a gay marriage or preside as a priest, you would get a lot of flack. But here, Prabhupada didn't engage in a marriage per se, but he saw, or he felt that for this person if that was going to help him, then do it. So it's like whatever will help you, do it. Settle down, and do it religiously, as you would in a heterosexual marriage. I think that devotee felt that it probably was not the best thing, and he did marry and had children. He had married a woman. He tried that. It lasted for some time. But anyway, Prabhupada acknowledged it. So in helping people and also in analyzing how we help ourselves, of course, we do what is standard or what is recommended as the standard, but the standard may not always fit everyone in every situation. So then we adapt and we adjust. It's time for my Chinese medicine so I can talk. I don't know. Mucus in the throat, something. So that's always been the principle with Prabhupada. Like, what should I do? Don't do anything that's going to make it difficult or impossible for you to do bhakti. Even if that doing that thing is like, okay, I should follow this rule, but if I do it, I won't make it. Like you're a sannyasi and you can't make it. So I try to follow the sannyas vow, but I can't, and I just end up with a girlfriend. All right, so what do? You get married. It's not traditionally what a sannyasi does. But Prabhupada wrote in the Bhagavatam, well, if that's what they have to do in order to be engaged in devotional service, then let them do that. And so they did that, and Prabhupada was more concerned about their spiritual life and their service than their ashram. So it wasn't like ideal. He would have wished they kept it. But he was just looking at, well, what's the best for this person? And for some people, remaining in the sannyas order was not the best thing because they really couldn't do it. So why try to do it if you can't? So you can do it as a grihasta, right? So that's Prabhupada's philosophy. We had a class yesterday, which was interesting. I don't know how many of you were there. And we were talking about, there were questions about Guru, but this topic of, I wanted to bring up the topic of homosexuality for a reason. Oh yeah, because the topic was, is the Guru perfect? Does he know everything materially? And I said that some Indian Gurus were asked about homosexuality and they didn't know anything about it. They never really heard about it, or they didn't understand it. So I was just making the point that sometimes you may ask your guru about something he doesn't know about. So obviously what he says about it is just, or he knows about it only because someone just told him something about it, and he's making a judgment based on some limited knowledge. And then we made the point that when you talk about something like homosexuality, most of how we talk about it is just conditioned by our culture. Because Prabhupada didn't say so much about it, although he said it was not ordinary, and it's statistically it isn't. It's only 1 or 2% in America. So it's not the ordinary way. And then one devotee was saying, but isn't it demoniac? Sex amongst members of the same sex. And I said, well, if you're just having sex, that's also even between man and woman. What's the difference? And so we were talking about how if Prabhupada said something is wrong, we tend to judge the people. Or the point we made was that Prabhupada said something is wrong, or this shouldn't be done. Or no, he would say this is not doing this is not Krishna conscious, or what we do, some activity like illicit sex or something. But in some cases, he doesn't actually describe much about it, but it's us who describes about it. We describe about it. We put like words there that weren't there. words of condemnation that Prabhupada didn't make. It's just like we add 2 and 2 and come up with a 5 or 3 or 7. But Prabhupada never added it up. He just said, here's a situation, but didn't say anything more, and then we add to it. So most of that is our cultural conditioning. So it's interesting if we look at it through Prabhupada's vision, even if something is not normal, like this man wanted to be a woman, and it's the first time it happened. It happened in 1970. I was there. I knew the person. And you know, Prabhupada's coming from India, doesn't know much about it. Although in India there's a group called the Hijraj, or they're transgender males. If you've been to India, you've probably seen them. Or it's said that if they give you a blessing, very good. If they curse you, it's going to be very bad. And Prabhupada said sometimes they would go to festivals. It was auspicious. So Prabhupada had seen them. In any case, I think the point is clear that Prabhupada, he always framed everything. Okay, what is going to help you become Krishna conscious? And so that's kind of the overriding principle. And it might seem like, well, what this person's doing is not what you normally do. Okay, it's not normal. All right. But will that help you become Krishna conscious? And it can only help you if it's not sinful. So in and of itself, I think we think things are sinful that aren't. We make judgments maybe because of Christian upbringing or so forth. British upbringing, Islamic upbringing, all these kinds of things are all considered sinful. In the Vedas, not really so much. But Prabhupada's point is that if a person has to do something which is not overtly sinful or overtly wrong, it's not going to destroy their bhakti, then if it helps their bhakti, then that's the principle. And if there's no alternative, then to do any better, then okay, so then give up your sannyas or become a woman and then just, do Krishna consciousness. Forget about it, become Krishna conscious. Give up your sannyas, get married, don't worry. Become whatever it is. So I think it's a super important principle for all of us to understand, both for ourselves and also for others. Christe thought there was no class today. Yeah, just 3 days. Okay. Thank you, Kaylee, for that. Kaylee. So, Christy says, I often encounter very conservative devotees who say that being born homosexual is bad karma and nonsense. For me, it seems the lack of education and still makes me really sad. Yeah. Well, that was my point, that this is not to judge anybody. I really say this for your own contemplation, that the way you evaluate our philosophy may actually be your own cultural conditioning that you're bringing into the philosophy. I read something interesting, which we discussed yesterday. Yesterday's class was very interesting, if you didn't see it. I read about the history of India in terms of their views on homosexuality. And it explained that in the original Vedas, homosexuality, when we're talking about sexual activity between members of the same sex, not just boyfriend, not just like devotees in a monogamous homosexual relationship where they're celibate, but maybe just people meeting, and so there were different punishments if you did it with your cousin or this or that, or how but it was not considered a big thing. And there were it was somewhat acceptable in certain situations, not for Brahmins, but a different standard obviously for Brahmins. Brahmins are sense-controlled. So it was talking about sexual relationships. And then it explained that because India was under the control of Muslim rule and then British rule, and British rule is very Victorian. If you know the word Victorian, it means, there's a word in English. It's basically conservative. We use the word stuck up. Everything has to be proper. And so anything that's out of line is, oh, look at him, that kind of, look how he's holding the fork, that kind of thing. So it said India was under the influence for hundreds of years of Islamic rule and then British rule. So their views on homosexuality changed from the original Vedas, being strongly influenced by Islamic culture and then British Christian culture. I studied also in Christianity. It was so amazing to see how the history of Christianity and the interpretations of Christianity over times in different cultures. Oh, it's a real circus, basically. And how different understandings come to be and how much those understandings are affected by the culture, tremendously affected by the culture. I mean, look at the different Christian traditions and how they dress and the way the churches are built. And it's all affected by indigenous culture, or a lot of it is affected by it. And if you're a historian, if you study, I think even if you don't study, I think it's just obvious. You're in a culture and you're adapting things. But this is known. So I thought that was so interesting that then Indians became all of a sudden, very down on homosexuality, but it's not because of their shastras, because of the influence of these foreign cultures. And now it's changed. The laws have just recently changed in India. So the reason I'm saying this is that we may see something that Prabhupada writes, and we think it means something that it doesn't mean, because that's what it means to us, because of how we were raised. It could be that Prabhupada means it. I'm not saying it doesn't, but often it doesn't. It's just like we're making an assumption. 2 + 2, equals 4, but not the same 4 that Prabhupada meant. It's a different 4. It has a different connotation. So that's why it's important to see how Prabhupada dealt with these things. Because his main concern was, all right, whatever you have to do to be Krishna conscious, then do it. And so Prabhupada had many disciples who everyone knew were gay. 2 of them he gave sannyas to. I don't know all the gay disciples. I know 2 of them. I know those 2 were sannyasis. He knew it wasn't a problem for him. Just, whatever. I think we make much more discrimination, male, female, homosexual, than Prabhupada did. I mean, there's a lot of talk about women being gurus or women being leaders and this and that. Is that purely Vedic? Is it coming from Prabhupada's books? Is it coming from our culture? Yes. Probably all of that. It seems all of it, not just purely, this is what the Vedas say. This is how Prabhupada did it. But he didn't always do it that way, because in this situation did it differently. So I read something really beautiful thing that some devotees wrote about homosexuality, and it was all based on this idea. It said we have to understand that Prabhupada was compassionate and wanted to engage everyone, so when you're looking at a situation, even if you have some shastric verse that says this is not good, but you also want to understand, well, how did Prabhupada deal with it, and what was going on in his consciousness, in his mind, in his heart when he was dealing with it. And so this devotee was saying that we have to understand, when you're trying to make a decision about how to deal with something, you can't just look at it only from, well, this is what the Shastra says, so it's like a black and white. I mean, obviously in some situations it is black and white, But in this particular situation, because Prabhupada didn't have one way of dealing with homosexuals, and he engaged many homosexuals, and he knew they were homosexual and didn't have a problem with them. This devotee was saying, you have to look at Prabhupada's heart when you're making these kinds of judgments. But his heart was compassion and engaging everyone in Krishna service. So I thought that was the essential point. So that, am I looking through the eye of compassion? Am I looking through the eye of my cultural conditioning, my previous religious training, the part of the world I was raised in, and what they think about these things? Now I can tell you something else, which is very interesting. Somehow or other, I don't know why, I've done some study on this topic. It piqued my interest. And there was a classroom. I think there were 8 or 9-year-old children. And there was a discussion, or they were shown pictures of a gay wedding. I don't remember it was 2 men or 2 women, or maybe a few different weddings. And they were asking their opinion, or they were asking them something about it. And their response was exactly the way kids would respond, or anyone would respond, to a heterosexual marriage. It wasn't like they didn't see any difference, because that's the culture now. That's the culture they grew up in. Different culture than a lot of us grew up in, where if you're homosexual, you had to hide it because you'd be condemned. And so these children are growing up in a different culture. The world is different. And so what's interesting about this is that in a culture where there's more egalitarian thinking, we stand out much more if we discriminate in ways we shouldn't actually be discriminating. Of course, you could go to the Shastra and say you should, but that's debatable, because we see everyone equally spiritually, and we want to make facility for everyone. But the point is, society is much different now than it was regarding many things. And we want everyone to be Krishna conscious. We always talk about make the world Krishna conscious. But, I think if some devotees were in charge of the world, they might send a lot of people back to Godhead by executing them. Because, Christians would execute homosexuals. Islamic Islamic religion, they would execute homosexuals. So where's that coming from? The culture, Sharia law, all right, how you interpret it. Does it actually say that? That's a whole other discussion. What does it actually say about it? Well, a lot of what it says about it is we're writing things that aren't there. We're writing, okay, it says this, therefore we should do this, but it doesn't tell you what to do. It just makes this is the position on this. But often it doesn't tell you what to do. And if we look at it from Prabhupada's perspective, like, so much of this doesn't matter. What should we do? We should engage them in Krishna consciousness. That's what we should do. So that's important for us to understand. And we have our principles, no doubt, but we also want to engage the world and everyone in Krishna's service, and that requires a very magnanimous attitude to be able to do it. And if we don't want to be, we can condemn sinful activity, of course, but we don't condemn people who are sinful. We can condemn the sinful action, but we also have to be careful of what sinful action we're condemning, because we condemn actions that aren't really sinful, that Prabhupada wouldn't see as sinful, so we have to be careful. So Fabiola says, she heard Prabhupada say, women, be good in Krishna consciousness, perhaps in the next life you will be luckier and reincarnate in a man body. Can you please explain? You have to send me that quote, because I never heard Prabhupada say that. Although, this is probably what he said. In traditional Varnashram society, which we don't have, but times were different. In that society, women were only given education up to the age of 12. They didn't live with their guru. They just were trained to be wives. And so when they got married, they learned from their husband, because he had been to Gurukula, if he was at least Vaishya, Kshatriya, or Brahmin. And so the husband became the guru, and the wife would serve him, and the wife would get all the benefit of the service of the husband. And then when she died, she would think of her husband and then become a man, which was a better position within the religious processes and culture and context and the nature of life. The men were like way better off than they are now, way more capable and qualified than the women. Well, you get this dichotomy, men and women, but then you go out on the street and you go, well, I don't see the dichotomy so much. So why is all this women less intelligent, men are like the greatest thing that ever happened? We don't see that. Well, because the men aren't so great. There's not much difference. We don't see much difference. Obviously, there's differences. Men have certain nature, women have certain nature. Sometimes it's said women are less intelligent, meaning they they're more attached materially. That's considered less intelligent by Vedic standards. The person who's most attached is the least intelligent. The person who's most detached is the most intelligent, and women tend to be more attached to home, family, clothes, all the, comfort. They like things soft, nice, beautiful. And men are like, just give me a place on the floor. I'll wear the same dhoti for 3 years. There is a difference. Yeah, I'll get ready in 5 minutes. My wife, I'll be ready in an hour. Yeah, and he's like, got ready in 5 minutes. He doesn't care what he looks like. His shirt has holes in it. Not all men are like that, but we're exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying. So that's there. But in Vedic culture, it was much different. And the men were qualified, and they assumed position of guru for the family, and they could actually do it. And they were of superior quality. And they didn't have the holy name. They didn't have Mahaprabhu's mercy, which just made it available for everyone. So that's where that idea comes from. So one thing we have to understand is there are our ideas in our scripture that are not applicable because Mahaprabhu came and just changed the rules of the game. So now Mahaprabhu comes and says, Krishna came. Mami partha vipasvita, ye pisu papayonayani, striyo vaishastata shudras. It's like striyo, women, shudra, which we're not even born as shudra, we're less. So we don't even qualify for that verse. And Vaishya, these are considered lower class. And we're below those. We're not even in the class. We're out of the class. We're outcast. Those are the lower castes, and we're below the lower caste. So then you say, women, it's right there in the Bhagavad Gita, women. Yeah, but we're lower than that. You men are lower than those women in that culture. But anyway, that's another topic. So, but the point is, Mahaprabhu comes and goes, okay, love of God for everybody, Shudra, outcast, man, woman, Vaishya, whatever, doesn't matter. So then those things don't apply anymore. And Prabhupada comes and goes, all right, we're not doing this, your husband's the guru thing, because your husband, how many husband gurus are there out there? Not so many. And these guys aren't so much, different than you. So you can get initiated and have your own guru. And so the whole thing changes. And then Prabhupada never said to his female disciples that your goal in life is to become a man in your next life. He always say, go back to Godhead in this life. And he gave the process. So that's why a lot of these things don't apply. Not that nothing applies, but a lot of things that Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita when he came as Mahaprabhu, it's like, okay, we don't follow that. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, do not disturb the minds of the ignorant. What is the Sankirtan movement? We're going out and saying, excuse me, sir, could you just stop what you're doing? I want to give you this book. Well, if we're following Bhagavad Gita, we're disturbing a lot of these people. Get out of the way. I don't want to. No, just look at it as like, okay, I'll look at it. But we're disturbing their lives. We're interfering. We're just like standing in the way. Don't go any further. You can't move. and we're putting a roadblock in their life. So definitely interfering. That's Mahaprabhu's mood. So you'll find many things in Scripture. You'll read them and you'll think, how does this apply today? It doesn't seem. And a lot of that is true. It doesn't apply because Mahaprabhu's mercy just kind of overrides it. So this is one example. And that was a long answer to a short question. Sometimes devotees say, I just have a little question. And I say, but I don't know if I have a little answer to your little question. Find a nice man and live with him. He didn't end up doing it. I have noticed that sometimes the problem is so huge in my mind because I don't give myself permission to adapt. There is an all or nothing understanding and I struggle so hard. Yeah, that's a good point. Do it all and I stress so much and I go crazy. Yeah, well, all or nothing is fine if you can do all because it's like burn the ship, We took the ship and now we're going to fight and, burn the ship because we're going to either die or win, but we got no place to go. That kind of mentality, but it requires a certain qualification and a certain mentality to do that because for some people, like that mentality, it's the only way they can live. And that's why they're successful, because they can do it. For most people, like you say, you drive yourself crazy because it's not realistic. And we've talked about this a lot in classes. I think there was a period of time that we were talking about this a lot, about the fact that I am the way I am, and I may not like the way I am, and I try to, maybe we could say, avoid the way I am, avoid acknowledging the way I am, or avoid trying to act the way I am, which obviously sometimes we have to, because if we just act the way we are, we could act our way out of Krishna consciousness. But we were referring to acting in Krishna consciousness according to what you're capable of. And so the only way to adjust to what you're saying, Kamalakshi, is to make it a goal which might take you your whole life. And so if you don't achieve it tomorrow, it's like, okay, that's all right. Have my whole life, this is what inspires me. So the very thing that drives you crazy could be the very thing that inspires you if you just put it on the timeline. But if your timeline is today or yesterday, yeah, then it's frustrating because it doesn't work that way. But if you have this perfectionist mentality, the beauty of it is the thing that you want to perfect is very inspiring. The downside is when you can't achieve it right away, you become uninspired or frustrated or you give up. So it's kind of like you've just undid yourself because you have this beautiful goal, but due to the craziness of having to achieve it ASAP and thinking myself worthless if I don't, you just kind of undermined it. Undermined it? Is that a word? You undermine the beauty of that goal. So, that's unfortunate. So you should all have very high goals, beautiful goals, be inspired by them. Just don't be uninspired by the fact that it might take you your whole life to get there. Doesn't matter, this life's not that long. If you get there, you got it. It took you millions of lifetimes to get this far. Now you actually finally got the goal in this life. So, just the fact that you've got the goal, you can dance for that and celebrate it. Whether you achieve it now or in a million years, at least finally I got the goal in this life. I didn't have this goal before probably, or I gave up on the goal before. So that's a way to deal with it. But maybe you just said that in the second paragraph, and I said it for you. So let's read it. But if I give myself permission with the understanding that I can find a middle ground if I need to, as I am not perfect. You're not? I thought you were. And am conditioned. Then my mind is relieved and I can keep striving for the ideal. Sometimes my mind is relieved so much the problem is not even a problem at all. Yeah, anymore. That's beautiful because it never was. And I don't have to use the middle ground. Oh, that's interesting. Sometimes you thought it was a problem and you could easily achieve it. Yeah. Hijra, that's what they're called, yeah. The men who dress as women in India. Yeah. If you take the train to Puri, they're on that train begging. And they kind of got used to the fact that Hare Krishna devotees don't give them money, and Hare Krishna devotees don't care. But all the other people give them money because they're afraid they'll get cursed if they don't. They know devotees don't care. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such an obvious reality that as conditioned souls, we have to, well, in anything, I wanna learn to play piano like the greatest piano player. Okay, and I'm so depressed because I can't. Well, how long you been playing? 10 days. And everyone will look at you and think, are you crazy? You're not going to learn in 10 days how to play like some virtuoso, like, what was his name when I was young? Liberace? I don't know if you know who that is. He was good. Or somebody, I'm not up on the great piano players, but, so that doesn't make sense. So why would we adopt that idea in Krishna consciousness? I've been a devotee for 30 years and still, this or that, yeah. And how long have you not been a devotee? Like 30 zillion lifetimes? And you're thinking 30 years you're going to overcome the conditioning of 30 zillion lifetimes? Yeah. You just have to be realistic. It's not, I mean, you could. Anything's possible, but generally it doesn't happen that fast. But it will happen. And that's the beauty of it. It will happen. Kelly says, time, place, and circumstance. I know Srila Prabhupada talked a lot about how teaching and preaching should adapt to these. Yeah, that's the trick. And so the trick is you keep your principles. We keep Krishna conscious principles, and we adapt as necessary so the door stays open for as many people as possible to come in and try it out. Not that we only open the door for some. There may be a few that will cause disturbance, of course. But basically the door is open for everyone. Amar Das is a gay disciple of Prabhupada. He's written a very good book giving Vedic perspective on LGBT people, backed up by Shastra. If anyone would like to get more info on the subject, I recommend it. The title is Tritiya Prakriti, people of the third gender. Yeah. Can you download it on the site, on the website? Is it a downloadable book, or you have to buy it? Do you know? Anyway, the site is GALVA, Gay and Lesbian Vaishnav Association, I think. And there's some articles there. Yeah, it would be good for you to read it, especially the older devotees. The younger ones, probably, they kind of are on a little more on board, but the older ones especially. Oh my Krishna, hearing you speak about these topics is such a relief. Sometimes very strict conservative views get into my head and seem to harden my heart, and I find myself feeling like Kamalakshi. Thank you. Thank her. She brought it up. But we already talked about this like a million times, didn't we? But a lot of this also, Kamalakshi, is not just personality. It could be, but it could be, how we were taught. You have to do everything perfectly and strictly and by the book and exactly, which is certainly, in many cases, very good instruction. It's just that it doesn't always apply to everything. And so as we grow, we have to learn that I've learned many things, but not everything is applicable to every situation. And if we go back to this other point, which is so important, that Prabhupada was compassion, and Vaishnavism is based on compassion. So you're strict with yourself. We have principles, we have tradition, but in terms of dealing with people, there has to be compassion so that we can make the door big enough for them to get in and serve enough things that they find something they want to eat. And they have to do that with yourself also. So, if you're overly strict with yourself to a point where you're making yourself miserable, you'll tend to do that with other people. Not always, but there'll be a tendency. So, Parananda has a question. Maybe why Jiva can't accept their body like this and want another version of sense gratification. It's not a deviation. It's not a conscious It's not a conscious choice. That like if you're, and sometimes you only have a boy and he's like 5 years old and he's like, can I wear a dress? Can I play with dolls? And you have a girl like, can I go like, climb that mountain, barefoot, can I go do the boy stuff? It's not thought out. It's just there's the body and the subtle body and the gross body are like two different things for some reason. If I were to give a reason, I would only speculate. Of course, you can say we take a body and a mind to enjoy. That's for sure. So what you say is true, but it's true for people, all people, homosexual or not. That's true for all people. We have a body and a mind to enjoy, but somehow or other, the body is not facilitating. Like the mind is like, in the last life, if they were thinking of women or wanted to be a woman, somehow it got the body of a man. I don't know. Maybe it was like they want to be a woman, but they hate women, so they got a body of a man, but they like women, the mind. Who knows? It doesn't really even matter. I mean, it would... Liberace. Yeah, it would be nice to know why, but I don't think we're ever going to know where it really matters. Because I would assume if you asked Prabhupada a question like that, he would just say, well, just be Krishna conscious with whatever situation you're in. I mean, if a man wants to enjoy a man or a woman wants to enjoy a woman, or a man wants to enjoy a woman or a woman wants to enjoy a man, the desire to enjoy is the same. How it manifests practically, then to say, well, if everyone were born gay, that would be the end of the world because you couldn't procreate. Well, I guess you could artificially do it, but it would happen so naturally. But, Paranananda, the last study I read was they studied 450 animal species where they found gay animals. So that was just to show that it's something inherited for some reason. Krishna Kanta says, I am addicted to studying non-Indian music. I have that potential addiction, but I didn't give into it. A lot of things I would love to learn that I don't because, it's like every page, Krishna Kanta, it's like every page you read of something that's not absolutely necessary is one page of Bhagavatam you didn't read. That's the way I see it, Like, if you can use it in Krishna service, if it helps, then you do it. But if it's just, this is what I'd be doing if I wasn't a devotee, but I can't really apply it, then yeah. So there's the book, there's the website. You may not agree with everything on the website. You may think he's extrapolating or whatever. But I always I always feel that we need to understand everybody as best we can. And, I'm not gay. I never really had discussions with gay people about what it's like. So I don't know. I never grew up with friends who were gay. At least I didn't know they were. So I never really tried to understand it. And, there's always this like, oh, that's bad, that's sinful. And, you don't understand it. But it's always good to understand it. And then you can make your own, at least educated decisions about it. But as I said, always keep that view of what can we do to help people become Krishna conscious? What's the best way? And different devotees will have different opinions, which definitely shows that our views on practically applying things are very much connected with our natures and our upbringing, cultural upbringing. I think that's obvious. And you study Christian history, you'll see it just manifesting in so many ways. Kamalakshi says, yes, it was how I was raised. We have an adult children of Kali Yuga meeting today at 3 p.m. That's interesting. Adult children of Kali Yuga. If anyone is interested, based of adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. Yeah, 12-step group. You're going to give us the link? Oh, message her for the link. That is, if you were raised in a family of alcoholics or your parents were somewhat dysfunctional, then it affects you. And a lot of devotees don't realize this, but when they hear this, they realize, oh, now I realize why I'm like this. It's because my parents, before they said, am I really having this problem because of my parents? And yes, you are. If your parents definitely were alcoholic or had serious problems in other areas, you may want to go to this program because it's pretty likely you've been affected, and some of the challenges you have could be due to this. So if you have any inclination, I would suggest it. It may be eye-opening. There's a lot of, a lot of influences make us who we are, and a lot of who we are is not so great, and so there are ways to heal that. And as we heal, it's just better for us and better for everyone within 6 feet of us. Namely the person you're married to and the devotees you work with. So a lot of times someone may say, well, I don't really feel like I have to work much on myself. So do it for the people who have to deal with you because it'll be easier for them if you improve yourself. Always be merciful on the people who have to deal with you. Krishna Karshini says, I have nothing against gays, but it seems that homosexual sex is more sinful than sex in marriage. If you want to take a Shastra perspective, my understanding is the way it's been interpreted to me by someone who knows the Shastra better than I am, it's actually less sinful because there's no chance of pregnancy, abortion, no chance of, you don't have to use contraception. Well, anyway, because of the pregnancy and the abortion, it has that. It's, okay, maybe we should take this to another level and say, I think for a heterosexual, it seems worse because we're not used to it. But if you're heterosexual and you're having sex with contraception, then really what's the difference when it comes down to it? I've never read anything in Shastra that really, what I read in Shastra is it's considered sinful, but not really that bad. Not like a big thing. So, but what, it's like, put yourself in their shoes. It's like, let's say, Krishna Karshini, you woke up tomorrow and all of a sudden you looked at your husband and you're like, no. And then you walk outside and you see a woman and you go, oh my, she's gorgeous. You start talking to her. And you say, will you hug me? What if that happened to you? Then, and you're like, you still have the same sexual desires, just now they're for a woman instead of a man. What do you do? Really got to put yourself in their position, I think, to understand this issue. And I think that's what Prabhupada did with so many of his disciples, not just homosexuals, but all kinds of problems. Just like really understood their challenges. And it's like, okay, what do you have to do? So, it's like, what do? You can get married, you can have a husband, but what if you were gay? Now what do you do? How do you deal with it? And you say, I have to express it. I can't control it. Okay, we understand that because that's true for every man and woman. Now, a lot of devotees would say, no, you just have to control it. Okay. But isn't that true for all of us? We have to control it, whether we're gay or not. So when you boil it down, there is a difference, but not significant. Say, yeah, well, if you're heterosexual, you can have children. But what if you don't want children and you just want sex? Then what's the difference really, fundamentally, in the consciousness behind it? Not really a difference. So, but I don't think you're going to get buy-in, as you know. I don't think you're going to get buy-in from everyone in ISKCON on this topic. because, as we said, it's not just what Prabhupada said, but it's what they heard before they heard Prabhupada say it. This is the many things that Prabhupada said. Our interpretation and the way we apply it often depends on what we heard about that topic before Prabhupada said it, how we were raised to believe about it. Isn't it? So that's interesting. Yeah, that's Amara's, I guess, initiated, no? Or second generation, or what? Prabhupada disciple? I'm not sure. I don't know if I know him. The conclusion is, don't do anything that would discourage anybody. And we had this, I was telling Krishna Karshini that it's really interesting meditation, where I ask you a question. Do you think that that being vegetarian is better than meat eating? Of course, you'll say yes. So do you think that what you're doing by being vegetarian is better? Obviously, yes, because you think it's better. Do you think you're better than people who eat meat? That seems like the logical conclusion. But that's a different question, right? Okay, this is better than that, but does it make me better? Well, it makes what I do better in this area. Doesn't mean that everything I do is better, but fundamentally, am I a better person? That's an interesting question, right? So, if the whole world were homosexual, that probably would be challenging in terms of raising children, and how many people would want to and how that would work. I don't know, we don't know. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, we'll say, yeah, well, it'd be better there's more heterosexuals than homosexuals. All right, so you're heterosexual. Are you better than a homosexual? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And we were saying yesterday that when the Catholics came to America, there were no Catholics. There were big riots out in front of churches when the churches went up. We don't want Catholics in our neighborhood, They're this, they're that. Then the Jews came. We don't want Jews in our neighborhood. They're this. The blacks. We don't want blacks in our neighborhood. Now in America, it's Asian. We don't want Asians. So there's always this sense of, we're better, especially amongst the white people. We call in America the white male pig, who thinks he's better than everyone. So that's the question. That's the question to ask ourselves. And through all these discussions, how do I feel myself? Do I feel better than everyone? That's a good question to ask yourself. And I will leave it at that. Krishna Karshini says, I watched a documentary about gay women who became gay after divorce of a man. They realized they're more happy with another woman. It seems that it was a conscious choice. It definitely was a conscious choice. But some women are attracted to both, men and women. So they may not have been aware that they were attracted to women. And they actually were, and they realized it. But I've heard similar things. I can understand. And I think some people become attracted to the same sex, but it's not a sexual thing. They're just burned out with the opposite sex. That also is possible, right? Yeah. Indonesia says, we are not vegetarian or not. We are neither vegetarian or no vegetarian. We are prasaditarian. Ho, ho, ho. If Krishna accepts our offerings, the food tastes better. I can say that. It's better for our mind also. But the thing is, like, when we became devotees, I think we all felt, but now I'm a devotee, I'm better than everybody else. Which we're acting in ways which are better, hopefully. Not always, not in every sphere, but hopefully. But isn't it interesting? Because when you become a devotee, you're supposed to feel that you're lower than everybody else, right? Yes? I think so. I think I read that somewhere. Did you read that also? Yeah, you read it also. That's interesting meditation. The danger of becoming, what is the danger of becoming Krishna conscious? That you improve yourself so much that you think you're better than everyone else. And it's kind of like you climb to the top of the building, you climbed to Mount Everest, and then you fell down the other side. You finally made it, and then you rolled down the other side and died. Something like that. You made it, now you're doing bhakti, and the result is you think you're better than everyone when you're supposed to think, no, everyone's better than me. Meditate on that chew on that one, ladies and gentlemen, for the next 10,000 years. See if you can kind of get into that one, because that's a big one. Okay. Catholic people often condemn homosexuals, sexualist people, and have antagonistic mode. Yeah. So, but I just heard a Christian broadcast, and it seems that some Christians believe that homosexuals can do something about it. Obviously, they can. How they act, they can do about it, but their nature, that they could do it or change it or get their chakras realigned or something, and evil spirits are in them, whatever. So yeah, if you believe like that. But Catholic Church is changing also, along with the culture of the world. So that's the point. Even if we said, okay, homosexuals, they're all bad, they're all sinful, they're all demoniac, right? Well, what about everybody else? Are they much better? Okay, people are engaged in breaking all the regulative principles that we follow. So all the people who are heterosexual do that. So it's Kali Yuga. So, it's like, Nityananda said, if you're going to kill, I think it was Jagai or Madhai, I forget which one. You're going to kill Madhai, might as well kill everybody. So, if you're going to condemn homosexuals, well, let's, be fair. Let's condemn everybody. Because everyone's condemnable in Kali Yuga. Why stop there? That's, just why pick on them? You can pick on everybody. Pick on the Chinese. They eat all kinds of weird things. And pick on the Italians because they're like mafiosos. Well, not all of them, but we'll just group them in and say you're all mafia. Why not? And if you're from Colombia, then you are a member of a gang, cartel, or something. Why not? Just group them all in. So it's like, where does it end? Did you see that joke? All these guys with guns at the temple, big mustaches, Indian guys at the temple with guns. And he said, I just asked for cartels, not the cartel. That was the joke. Anyway, so we have 3 minutes, and we have one more comment, because we're going to start japa in 3 minutes. The Shastric statements sometimes sound so strict, but I always have the feeling that the Shastric rules and regulations aren't there for us to moralize about them and judge other people and their behavior on account of them, but to warn us about what's detrimental for our spiritual development and motivate us to avoid it. Yeah. So there's 2 points there. Some of them are so strict because they're actually applicable for another time, not Kali Yuga. They were given at another time. But there's a principle behind it, so you adapt, you adjust that principle. And it's always about us. That's the point. And this is a good point to end on. It's always about us. You can judge other people. Congratulations. Everybody does it. You're not special. But to introspect and see your own fault, that's difficult. But to judge others, that's easy. And if we condemn, it's not really great for the preaching because, as you know, people want to be loved, not condemned. And as I said, Mahaprabhu's movement is a movement of mercy, not punishment. It's not about justice. So that's important. So we're going to have to leave you now as I zoom over to the japa class. You're all invited, and I have to say some inspirational words on japa. Totally unprepared, but as you know, I always manage to say something. So you come and join us and see what I say. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.